By the time I'm done doing an overview of this lesson, working with the JSON data, all of your labs should be up and running, and Workbench should be opening up the starting workspace for today, which is this one here, work with JSON data. Let me just double check in mind. Did it actually do it? It didn't. Oh, how disappointing. Okay, so we will be opening up that particular workspace. I'll paste that into the chat as well. We'll just have to navigate to it. So we're going to be starting today with an existing workspace. Just a reminder that if you're working through these lessons outside of class time with an on-demand machine, you don't have to get all the way through a course in the time allotted. You can come in and continue with whatever lesson you left off at. Each lesson, if necessary, has a starting workspace and a completed workspace as well. So in Workbench, I'm going to open up that workspace. And here we are. Something I wanted to mention, there's this caching button here. Later on today, we'll want to turn that off, but not yet. If you have the caching turned off, the translation will run faster, but you won't be able to inspect anything. You also will not be able to do partial runs, which, while authoring your workspace, is really handy. So we want to make sure that while authoring the workspaces, we have the caching turned on. Later on, we'll see an example where we do want to turn it off, but we won't be seeing that for another hour or two. So I'm going to run the workspace here and inspect the cache. Yesterday, we saw a situation where the translation log sometimes becomes unreadable. In that situation, we had to save the workspace, close Workbench, open the workspace back up. I think that might be related to this automatic inspection. So I'm going to experiment with that today. I'm going to turn off that automatic inspection. I'm not a fan of it anyways. I like to just click on the caches. If I want to inspect multiple caches, I can always hold down the control key and inspect multiple caches that way. So we have our response body here. Our response body is JSON. While inspecting it, I can turn on the syntax highlighting, and here we can see we have basically the same information that we saw in the Excel spreadsheet yesterday. We have a company name, first name, last name, latitude, license number, etc. But right now, it's all kept in one attribute value as JSON. I want to be able to break this apart into multiple features. When dealing with JSON, there are a number of JSON transformers. In the transformer gallery, if we go to categories, we do not find a JSON category. But if I just select my HTTP caller here and type in JSON, this will list all of the JSON readers, writers, and transformers. I can filter that further by just giving me the transformers, and I can see that I have a handful of JSON handling transformers. Now, generally speaking, the names of transformers are fairly descriptive and give you a pretty good idea of what a transformer does. Except in this case, the JSON fragmenter will be the transformer that we'll want to use here, even though it's not particularly descriptive of what it is that we're doing. In the help here, it gives us a better indication, extracts portions of JSON formatted text into new FME features, and that's actually what we want. So I'm going to select the JSON fragmenter. When you drop in a transformer, if you had the previous transformer selected, it will be automatically connected. Now that it's connected, I can hit enter to go into the properties of this transformer. We have our transformer name, JSON fragmenter. We can leave that alone for now. If this was a larger workspace and I had a lot of JSON fragmenters, maybe I would want to indicate that this is the JSON fragmenter for the business owners. The input source is a JSON attribute. The JSON attribute was our response body. We have our JSON query here. These can be a little tricky to put together. Quite often, JSON payloads have a lot of separate sections, and you can sort of drill down with this query to the section that you want. But for our example, the default will work. The fragment as format, it is JSON. Reject features which produce no fragments. Yes, this is the really important part right here. We want to make sure that we flatten the query results into attributes. We want those attributes to be on the feature. So I'm going to set that to yes, and that will be sufficient. There is an option down here to expose the attributes. I could type in the names of the attributes, but I don't like typing things in, so we're not going to do it that way. There's another way for us to expose attributes, which is much easier, and we'll see that in just a moment. So I'll hit OK, and then I'll run to this. Generally, while I'm authoring, I will add a transformer, configure it, and then run to that transformer and inspect what I've got just to make sure that I'm getting what I expect. I'm getting the right volume of data. I have 100 features. I have some attributes here. I have the creation instance, which came from the creator. I have the response body and the HTTP status code that came from the HTTP caller, but I don't really have much else. I thought that I was going to get some attributes, and I did. It's just that they don't show up in the table view by default. Over here in the record information window, I can see that I have my exposed attributes, which is what I see in the table view. I also have unexposed attributes. These are features that FME, when I'm inspecting a feature, or these are attributes that FME, when I'm inspecting a feature, can see are on this feature, but they are not defined on the canvas, so they are unexposed. I have my company, first, last name, latitude, license, longitude. If the attributes are not exposed, I cannot use them in the canvas. So if there's some other attribute management that I want to do, or make use of these attributes as parameter values, I have to expose them. I could expose them in the JSON fragmenter, but like I said, I'd have to type the names in, and I don't like doing that. So what I'll do instead is use another transformer. So I select my JSON fragmenter transformer, and I'm going to type in expose. The reason why I typed in E is because it's the last letter in an attribute. If I typed in attribute, there's a lot of transformers that start with the word attribute, and I have all of those in my filter. So I started with the E and then went to expose, and that suggests the attribute exposer. So I'll drop in the attribute exposer. The attribute exposer exposes attributes. Now, something that the attribute exposer can do that the JSON fragmenter cannot is import possible attribute names from the data cache. The JSON fragmenter could import them from a separate data set, but it doesn't have the option to bring it in from a data cache. So I'm going to bring it in from the data cache. The data cache is aware of all the attributes that are on the features, even if they're not defined on the canvas. So here are all of my attributes. I could clean this up a bit. There are some that I'm not interested in, but we'll just stay with what it gives us here. So I'll import, and it brings in all of those attributes. It defines them on the canvas. And once they're defined on the canvas, now I can make use of them. Also, when I run to this and inspect it, these attributes are now visible in the data preview in my table view. So this basically gets us as far as we were seeing yesterday, reading in data from an Excel spreadsheet. Instead of reading in from an Excel spreadsheet, we used these four transformers to basically get us to the same point. while reading in from a web-based API. So that is work with JSON. I'll give you 10 minutes to work through that. And we will continue at 2:26. Remember, if you run into any problems, click on the hand icon and request lab assistance. Good luck, everybody.